So, as Jason said, I do meet and collaborate with a lot of people from around the world. I grew up in a very modest household in New York. My mom was a school teacher. My father was a case manager. And so I would have never dreamed that I could meet people and interview people like Elon Musk. Or like last week, I got to meet one of my biggest influencers, which is Jeff Bezos. He recently surpassed Bill Gates as the richest man in the world. And this isn't about just photo ops, it's about if you get inspired by Dali, or Michelangelo, or Da Vinci, you actually get to meet these people, there's a certain energy that they emit and you emit, and you just feel this amazingness of the whole experience. So imagine if you meet the most inspiring entrepreneur you've ever wanted to meet in your life in the first week of your year. Like, how does it make you feel, right? So I wrote this book called Big Game Hunting, Networking with Billionaires, Executives, and Celebrities. So I'm going to ask one question. Whoever answers it correctly gets a free book. 20 strategies in networking. What do you do before, during, and after events? Because in life, success is about the relationships you build. And if you don't have a great network, you're not going to have a great life. So question is this, simple question. I travel a lot. How many countries did I travel to last year? No, not that much. Someone was really close on this side of the room. 10. What's your name? Naomi. Let's give Naomi some love. I do have some books later on when we do the book signing, so some of you might get the book as well, because I actually don't sell the physical book online anywhere. I actually just sell them at when actually clients buy them for my speeches. So, as I said before, I travel a lot. And I wrote this book not because I like networking. I wrote this book because I find that a lot of people don't network well, and I want to help people, so therefore I wrote a book. And over the last year, I traveled to close to 100,000 miles, 22 cities, 10 countries, and spoke to 10,000 plus people. And I realized that even though people want to network, they always talk about how you got to work the room, Chris, you got to work the room. Now, if you believe that, it's kind of just half true, meaning if you're in the wrong room, it doesn't matter. So working in the room is a waste of time if you're in the wrong room. Think about that. If I have a realtor client, I have a lot of realtor clients. They're like, oh, Chris, I want to sell $1 million property. I'm like, great, what kind of events do you go to? Well, I don't know, I go to like a Chamber of Commerce or a Rotary Club. I'm like, okay, well, what percentage of the audience in that room makes at least $150,000 a year? Because if they're not making a certain amount of money, why can they be your client if they don't have the gross monthly income? It's simple math, but what I'm saying is, if you want to reach a certain clientele, or you want to be an author, you want to be a world traveler, why are you going to places hoping to meet someone when you should be spending the time to research the people you want to meet? There's not a coincidence when I get to secure speeches where I was in Vegas in front of 5,000 people, but I met this contact at a global conference in Atlanta last year. So what I'm saying to you is, find the actual places that have the people you want to be like, not the people you might be now meeting. If everyone's the same here, well, what can you aspire to be? Just like if I'm meeting Jeff Bezos, I want to aspire to be him in that he has Amazon, he has cloud computing, he has Blue Origin, he has Washington Post, he just bought Whole Foods, and he also has a clock project. Did you know this? He has a fun passion project where he has a 10,000-year clock project. But what I'm saying is, when you meet people that are just massively ambitious and inspiring, they don't think the same way that we do. So if you want to be better, do better, and have more and do more for other people, you have to think on their wavelengths. It's not about just going to just some random event. Spend the time to find the events that allow you to have the highest probability of meeting people that you want to be like and work for or work with. Make sense? So build your network. On the journey that I was on last year, I realized that, you know what? Though people want to network better, what I found is that even if they're in the right room, they don't know how to speak. And by speaking, I don't just mean public speaking like I am now. It's about just communicating, connecting. And so today what I thought I would do is share with you 5 specific things on how you can connect better based on a book that I'm writing this year called The Global Speaker, 5 simple steps to network better, find new clients, and inspire millions with your story. Now, the network better is this. I call speaking next level networking. Networking is you come to a room, you get a stack of business cards, you go home, you put that stack of business cards on your table, and what happens to the business cards? Generally nothing. They gather dust, which is why I don't have business cards. If you are a speaker or a panelist, you're up here, immediately you're elevated. Sometimes they pay you, sometimes they don't, but immediately you have like a VIP badge. When I was at that Vegas thing, you have the green room experience, you have all this VIP treatment, but if I want to find clients, colleagues, strategic partners, investors, fans, followers, what probability do I have as a speaker when you're a speaker to actually get all the things that you want? Because simply by just standing on the stage, you're already elevated, so that's what I call next level networking. So anytime you go to a conference, you would have asked the organizer, hey, do you have a spot where I can potentially speak? Because you will exponentially be so much more successful if you position yourself as a speaker. Now that being said, you're like, well, Chris, I'm not a great speaker, and I don't really like it, and you know, they always say that speaking, people fear that more than death. Well, guess what? If you don't do things that people fear, you won't do things that successful people do, which are doing things that people fear. John Paul DeJorio, I got to interview him last year. He created Patron Tequila and John Paul Mitchell Hair Care. He's like, you have to do the things that other people don't want to do. This guy's old school. He's like in his 60s. He used to literally go to doors and knock on doors. Now it's like we're in the social media world where you're just like sinking money into Facebook ads, testing stuff, getting your audience, do a lookalike audience, and just keep sending more ads to people all over the place. Back in the day, you're like knocking on doors. That's like hardcore. Who wants to do that? I don't think he wanted to do that, but that's why he's so successful. So I'm going to go through 5 things. And if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to talk to me. But it's really about how do you communicate better and how do you connect better? Awesome. Who's this guy? Yeah, it says there. I love it when I hear this guy talk because he talks about how if you were to go into his office, he doesn't have his college diploma on his wall. He doesn't have his master's degree on his wall from Columbia University, quite a good school. He has his Dale Carnegie public speaking certificate on his wall. He said that it's changed his life, public speaking, and that public speaking will last you 50 or 60 years. In his case, he learned when he was 20, and now he's 87, so it's actually lasted him 67 years. But this guy used to barf. He would literally physically get ill when he knew he had to speak. But he knew, like all successful people know, you do what's hard to do. You do what you fear. You do things that are uncomfortable, because if you don't push past your comfortability, you will never get to where you want to go. And this man, you may not see him as a speaker per se, but for a guy to say that that class changed his life when he's 20, and it also helped to get his wife, think about what you want to do. I wish, so I joined Toastmasters, I think about 18 years ago. With Toastmasters, that's a nonprofit thing where they actually codify how to go about speaking. But if this guy says to us, learn public speaking. I know it's fearful, I know it's bad, I know it makes you nervous, but I can't think of anything else other than meditation that has exponentially changed my ability to think more clearly, be more confident, and be committed with what I want to do, which is serve you. Just think about that. If I'm standing here, I better know what I'm talking about, because otherwise I have all these people looking at me, and they either might be smiling, shaking their head, wondering what the heck is this guy talking about, or perhaps what I most love is connecting with one audience member. And I see the eyes light up like, oh my God, I know what exactly you're talking about. That's the beauty of connecting. And that's why this man always says that learn how to public speak. And I'll share with you why public speaking is so fearful, even more so than death. If you look at psychology, you look at human nature, it's because back in the day we were in tribes, we were hunter and gatherers. We were in actual groups, because if there's like a lion or a tiger or a boar or a horse, whatever it might be that's trying to attack us, if we're in a group with 5 spears, it's better than just one person with 1 spear, because we have a higher probability of death, literally, if we're by ourselves. So it makes complete sense why, when you're up here, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid. And I always tell all my clients, stop focusing on yourself. Stop focusing on what you look like, what you're dressed, how your hair is. You focus on your audience. You focus on helping them. You remove the ego and you say, how can I help my audience? How can I focus on them so that it's not about egocentric, it's about your audience. And if you start focusing on that, then you'll be exponentially more confident, clear, committed, and wanting to get on stage, because it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about the audience and what we can do for the world. So remember his lesson, because it's something that I always remind myself about. It's important. So the first thing is this. You share your story. We've all heard this before, but hearing things isn't enough. Knowing things isn't enough. You have to dig deep and feel it, smell it, taste it, touch it. It has to be so ingrained in yourself that it's a story that you fundamentally believe in. Stories are 22 times more memorable than facts. How many of you have ever read a book called Sapien by Yuval Noah Harari? Sapien. He's a professor out of Jerusalem at Hebrew University. This guy wrote a book called Sapien, Homo Sapiens, and he studies human history. It's called the brief history of mankind. Whether you want to read the crazy thick book or watch some of his videos, what essentially does, he gives you a very broad stroke of us as human beings. For 2.5 million years, we've been around. But for up till about 100,000 years, we were all insignificant, completely. And what I mean by that is, if we were here in this room, and there's a chimpanzee here, there's a gorilla here, there's a monkey there, there's a dog here, there's a cat there, we were all pretty much the same significance because we didn't really affect the world. But the first revolution that happened was what he called the cognitive revolution. And the cognitive revolution was that, for whatever reason, we as human beings, human sapiens, started sharing stories. And by sharing stories, we can project and echo and push our cause and our mission and our purpose out into the world. Whereas if you're like a chimpanzee, they're not going to get on a microphone and start sharing their story with you. And what's profound about his book is that every single thing we know is a story. Money is a story. If I were to talk to this woman here and say, that's a beautiful necklace. What's your name? Noelle. Noelle, I want to pay you $10,000 for that necklace. Can I have the necklace? Yeah. Right? So I'm saying maybe she bought that for $100. And if I'm giving her $10,000, you're like, oh my God, I have this massive profit margin. I love this guy. He's amazing. But if I were to go to a chimpanzee and I say, hey, chimpanzee, you know that banana? I'm going to give you $10,000. You know what the chimpanzee is going to say to me? He's going to laugh at me. He's like, what? But as human beings, money has value because we created a story around it. Everything. You think of BMW, the ultimate driving machine. You think of a diamond is forever. That's all marketing. That's all story. What I'm saying is, the reason why we as Homo sapiens are actually here conquering the world, which we are now affecting the world on a massively good and bad scale, is because we have stories. So this isn't just about, oh yeah, Chris, I've heard this before, sharing your stories. No, this is about like a human history of why we're even still here on this earth based on historical, empirical evidence. So when you talk about a story, make sure you know how important it is, because this is how cultures, societies, companies are shared, expanded, and inspiring the world. So the story is so fundamental to why we're here, literally. So I'll share with you my story. I briefly talked about how I grew up in New York City. My mom was a school teacher. I not only was punished for talking in class, and think about this. The first memory I have in school at St. Mary's Elementary School in Woodside, Queens. Anyone from New York? New Yorkers? Those from New York? So I grew up in Catholic school. Catholic school, it's pretty harsh. These nuns and people of faith, especially Catholics, are pretty harsh. So think about this. The first memory I have of school is getting punished by a person of authority telling me as a 6-year-old kid, Christopher, stop talking. Christopher, stop talking. Christopher, you're staying after class and writing, I will not talk in class on the board 100 times, 200 times. My 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. McArdle, was so angry, so incensed, and so just like frustrated with little Christopher. She's like, Christopher, you're staying after class and writing, I will not talk in class 500 times. I'm 8 years old. That's like abuse. I'm standing here, and I blame all my teachers for my atrocious handwriting because I'm writing on the board, I want to talk in class. And all I'm thinking is, I want to go play baseball. I want to play basketball, but I'm like, I got to talk. I don't know. But all the boards of the entire classroom was my penmanship. But how ironic, silly, and ridiculous is it that what I was punished for, I get paid for now? So any teacher, any father, any mother, any uncle, any societal people that gave you this pressure saying you should do this and you should do that, just remember they're not always right. Because if I listened to my teachers, I wouldn't be here. But how ironic is it that I literally got punished for the very gift that I supposedly have as a speaker? I was also labeled as having a reading disability, so I was a slow learner. But the worst thing was, I was very, very short. I was the shortest kid in my class for 8 years. And what do? Again, they're very masochistic. They line up the shortest kid every single time when we go into church. They line up the shortest kid every time we go to confession. They line up the shortest kid every time we go out to the playground. So it was always front and center on me because I was the shortest kid. Now, I guess now, looking back, I'm like, that's cool because now I stand out because I'm literally leading the line. But if that was one of my biggest insecurities of being short, they always put me in the front of the row, in the front of the class, and I was like 4'10". This is my 8th grade graduation. And I went to an all-boys school in high school. So the shortest kid next to me was 5'4". So I almost looked like a dwarf at 4'10", okay? Now I share this with you, not because I love bringing up all these scars and vulnerabilities. It's because sharing a story is about sharing the low points. And the high point is, how can this little kid that was punished for talking too much, who had a reading disability, who was really short, figure out how to meet this guy, Elon Musk, who built PayPal, Tesla, SpaceX, SolarCity, Neuralinks, the Boring Company? How could that be? And the process of the how is where are you all coaches, speakers, entrepreneurs? When you share your story, the how is what they're paying you for, the value. And so for me to go from here all the way down to not just meeting this guy, but if you Google Elon Musk and Christopher Kai, I convinced this man, a man that's probably more challenging to meet than the President of the United States, to come to the worst part of town in LA, where he changed the schedule around, bought a security detail there. I interviewed him for a half hour at a homeless shelter, the largest one of its kind, and I paid him $0. So the how is the skill set that you've learned as an expert that someone's going to pay you for to teach them the how. But if you don't share the low points and the high points, it's just like Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton is cool. I just saw her this Sunday at Golden Globes Awards. I see her a lot. She actually volunteers at the homeless shelter. She does a lot of good work, which the press doesn't really want to say because they prefer to rather paint her as a party girl, but she has a good heart. What I'm saying is, yeah, Paris Hilton can be inspiring. Yes, Paris Hilton is successful. Yes, Paris Hilton is very wealthy, but where are her low points? You know, when you look at someone like Mandela, that guy was in jail for 27 years. Did you know that Nelson Mandela could have left jail early, but he chose not to because he said, if my comrades that I'm fighting with and for don't get released with me, I'm going to stay in prison. Can you believe that? This guy was in jail for 27 years for what he believed in. Low points, high points. The lower your points, the higher the dream and the higher and most inspiring the story it is. So don't be afraid to share those low points. Don't be afraid to share the vulnerabilities, because if you don't share those, people won't relate to you. Next one is this. I meet a lot of speakers, a lot of coaches. My clients, one of the biggest challenges they have is, well, Chris, why would people believe in me? I don't have the credibility. And so I share with them a concept called borrowed credibility. How many people know of a guy named Malcolm Gladwell? He wrote a book called Tipping Point, Outlier, Wag the Dog, phenomenal books. He talked about outliers. Outliers, he said, all these outliers like the Bill Gates and the Beatles, the band that for the younger generation, the Beatles were like the biggest band in the world 50 years ago. And he said, if you invest 10,000 hours of time, whether as a Bill Gates or the Beatles, one of the biggest rock bands in the world, you will gain this mastery. Now, what I mean by borrowed credibility is, when I say 10,000 hour mastery rule, people often think, oh yeah, I've read that Malcolm Gladwell book. What they don't know is Malcolm Gladwell borrowed the credibility of a guy named K. Anders Ericsson who did the study. He's a psychologist based out of University of Florida. So what I always tell my clients is, you find a research-based scientist, psychologist, doctor, institution that has studied this stuff. So now your opinion of saying, hey Chris, I want to talk about mindset with my clients. Great. We'll connect that with a woman named Dr. Carol Dweck, who studied mindset for 20 years and found that mindset, based on her experience and research, are two things. So now it's not just an opinion, it's research-based. If I talk about networking, I can say, yeah, everyone can say networking is important, but Ron Burt, another network scientist out of the University of Chicago, a very prestigious school, studied networking, science. It's a science that your network is the #1 best predictor for career success. Lastly, when I talk about meditation, some people always need to have empirical evidence, but when I started meditating 20 years ago, and when I started realizing the first time I meditated, I was like, oh my gosh, it was like an outer body experience. Like, I felt so like in the moment and zen. It was like nothing was there. It was like the most peaceful experience in the world. We're now 20 years later. I often do this as an exercise. It's kind of scary, but I'll like have someone like put their open palm on my abdomen, belly button area, and when I breathe, it's so calm and quiet, it's almost scary that they don't even feel my breath. What I'm saying is, okay, my opinion is meditation is really, really, really powerful. Then I can reference things like, well, Ray Dalio, one of the most successful entrepreneurs, talks about meditation, but then if you Google meditation, research-based facts, you'll see Harvard Medical School referencing how meditation minimizes stress, improves your immune system, minimizes anxiety, minimizes depression, but this is based on empirical evidence. But you see how you go from a coach, a speaker, which is your opinion, that's just a claim, to when you have third-party proof, being a subject matter expert, then immediately you're like, oh, okay, I believe this man or woman. Does that make sense? Because I meet too many people, especially at conferences that are more personal development, I meet people that have this great heart, this great compassion, but they don't couple that with the science-based stuff, and they wonder why they're not getting the price points they deserve. So if I was featured on Forbes, and one of my online programs is called GPS, which stands for the Gifted Professional Speaker Program, and I talk about how I help entrepreneurs become professional speakers, but that was written up in Forbes. And then they actually put a picture up of Tai Lopez, who Tai Lopez is one of the biggest social media influencers in the world, and he also has like a negative connotation and a positive, but I can tell you for a fact that he's a phenomenal marketer, he's really good at finding staff, and some of my clients I've met through speaking at some of Tai's events. It's easy to talk to people like a Dan Bilzerian or a Tai Lopez and say, oh, they're scammers. Well, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, I don't know. But are they giving you information that is of value? If you didn't even invest in any of their programs, but you learned, is that of value instead of just criticizing someone for being a scammer or not? But when you look at that, think about how you become a subject matter expert, and it's never been more possible to be featured in Forbes or Inc. or any magazine because you have staff writers and you have contributors. I'm a Huffington Post contributor. I can write whatever I want. And so if you're profiled in Huffington Post, immediately, again, you build up your stature, because without that, you will not get the price points you deserve. People will just see you as another person that's speaking and coaching, but why should they believe you? So keep that in mind, that until you become a celebrity, you have to be a subject matter expert. This is why if you're getting paid $100 for your program or $1,000, like how many of you actually are speakers right now? So The Holy Grail is really $10,000 and higher. If you get paid any money, frankly, for speaking, it's great. I got paid $50 for my first speech, and I was the happiest guy in the world. The last speech, I got paid $30,000. I was more happy getting paid $50 17 years ago than I was getting paid $30,000 3 months ago. Because when I got paid that $50 at an all-black Pentecostal church in Stamford, Connecticut 17 years ago, it was by a serendipitous adventure. I gave a speech on my first book. It was about college success. My colleague, the reverend at the time, his name is Desmond Hamilton, walks up to me with a big smile and says, "Christopher, great job. Our congregation loves you." I'm like, "Oh, thanks so much, Desmond." And he hands me a check. I'm like, "Oh my God, no, I can't take this." I look at the check, and he paid me. He paid me money, actual money, for me to speak. Now again, mindset. I can be all angry and negative, like, "Oh my God, this guy paid me $50. Who does he think I am? I wrote a book. I'm a subject matter expert." Instead, it was my first time I ever got paid in my life for a speech. I'm like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And every single time I make money from a product or service, I always do my best to document that because, like everything in life, the first one is always the most important. The first one. I used to be a singer-songwriter. I've written hundreds of songs. The first CD I ever released, I sold for $10. I have that framed. The first book that I wrote, that same book that I gave a speech at that church, I framed the $20 bill, and the book wasn't even done yet. I had an actual physical draft that I was passing out for feedback, and this man, Steven from Rancho Cucamonga, I'll remember this to this day, he gave me $20, and he refused to take back his money because he said, "Chris, I believe in your dream. I want to pay for the value that you're giving to someone." And so those two, $20 bill and a $10 bill, are framed because you don't want to go through life thinking, "I will be happy when I reach that summit. I will be happy when I write that book. You want to be happy now for just doing it. When people always ask me, "Chris, how do I be a speaker? Chris, how do I write a book?" You write today. Even if it's for 10 minutes. Don't make excuses anymore. I remember this one woman I was talking to. She's like, "Oh, I don't have time, Chris. I have 2 kids." I'm like, "Look, stop making excuses. If you're telling me, yes, you're busy, yes, you're mom, I get all that stuff. But if you're telling me you can't spend 10 minutes for a dream that you believe in, you're never going to be successful. 10 minutes a day is 70 minutes a week. That's an hour already. That means that's 52 more hours you're planning on your dreams as opposed to whining about what you're not doing." So what I'm saying to you is, if you want to be successful, you have to start where you are. And if you want to get paid big bucks, you have to start branding yourself as a global speaker. Now here's a very quick life hack with being a speaker. A lot of these companies, let's say Berkshire Hathaway. How many of you know a realtor that works at Berkshire Hathaway or an insurance agent that works at New York Life? Or has the possibility of meeting someone that works at New York Life or Berkshire Hathaway? Insurance. Very high probability. You might not know that, but Berkshire Hathaway, which is owned by Warren Buffett, and New York Life, they're both Fortune 500 companies. So if you were to meet someone that's an agent at a Berkshire Hathaway, they always have sales calls, they always have people that they invite to be a guest speaker, even if they don't pay you. As soon as you, as a life coach, a mindset coach, a transformational coach, a sales coach, whatever coach you are, as soon as you walk in that door and give a speech at Berkshire Hathaway, you can already say, "I've spoken at a Fortune 500 company." Now, how powerful does that sound? That you spoke at a Fortune 500 company, because the whole connotation is, "Oh my gosh." When I had a client from Switzerland fly here to my event in October, and I told him he will speak at a Fortune 500 company, his eyes lit up, because he imagined, "Oh my God, it's this massive room," even though it was a small agency in Beverly Hills of a friend of mine, but it didn't matter because from a branding standpoint, it's factually true that this man in Switzerland spoke at a Fortune 500 company. Now, of course, he wants to get paid big bucks, but you have to start somewhere, and these are one of the best and quickest ways that are actionable and tangible, because instead of you just saying, "Hey, I'm a speaker," big freaking deal, where have you spoken? Because the branding itself speaks volumes. The first time I spoke at a Fortune 500 company was a company that I worked for, which is American Express. Also, if you want to be a national speaker, just drive to Las Vegas, speak at a Chamber of Commerce or a church or a Rotary Club, you're already considered a national speaker. The first international speak I gave was in Hong Kong 17 years ago for Rotary Club. I step on stage in a foreign country, I give one speech, I'm considered an international speaker. I meet a lot of people, they feel almost weird, odd, uncomfortable, thinking, well, Chris, like what I envision as global speaker is kind of what you're doing now. You're traveling to Zurich and Lithuania, you're speaking in Australia and Jamaica. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But think about that. What does an international speaker mean? You have spoken at a foreign country. So you have to change your mindset around of what you think is necessary to be a speaker. And by the way, some people think that, oh, Chris, I have to write a book to be a speaker. No, you don't. It helps, but you don't have to. Again, I meet a lot of people that have these mindsets, these thoughts, but you don't want to only count on the thoughts that you have, because the thoughts that you have got to where you are now, which is why these conferences and people like Jason and Regan and Eric Swanson, all these people are important, because they're not going to help you think the way you are. They're going to help you think that you want to be. Albert Einstein once said it really well. He said, the problems we face cannot be solved on the same level of thinking the problem was created on. We all have problems that we think about. We can't change our mindset if we're thinking the same way, which is why the best way is to find people at these conferences or to read books that I keep referencing, like the Malcolm Gladwell's or the Yuval Noah Harari's. I mean, I can give you 100 books to read. Remember that. Does this make sense about branding yourself? Your brand is directly related to your price points. Every single client that I have that doesn't make what they want or deserve is because they're not focusing on their brand. They're focusing on the speaking part, which is important, but your brand is more important. I had a client who's in Arizona named Amanda. She said, Chris, I'm so inspired by your program. I'm doing the steps, I'm watching the videos, and I'm speaking at some kind of a solar company. I'm like, oh, cool, great, Amanda. Find out what the solar company is called. Next week she comes back and says, Chris, I'm speaking at Solar City. I'm like, what, Amanda? Did you know that Solar City is Elon Musk, one of his companies? I didn't know that, Chris. Will you make sure you share that? Now, you don't want to also assume that people know who Elon Musk is. How many of you know who Elon Musk is? Raise your hand. So you're a more ambitious entrepreneur, but trust me when I say not everyone knows who he is. So with my client, I said, you have to stress that, because as soon as she says, yeah, I spoke at Solar City, Elon Musk company, if you ask them, oh, do you know who Elon Musk is? And they say, oh, of course I know who Elon Musk is. But if they don't know who Elon Musk is, you tell them, well, Elon Musk, he's worth about $10 billion. He's a revolutionary. 100 years from now, he'll be one of the most inspiring people, like a Thomas Edison, like a Henry Ford, like a Rockefeller. He's that up there. And she spoke at his company, or one of them, which is now underneath Tesla. Another client of mine, she's only 21 years old, in Sweden. She just spoke at IKEA. But I'm stressing this to her, I'm stressing this to all of you. Look back at all the speeches you've given and think about the name recognition, because it's not impressive if you can't have a brand name recognition or a number recognition. Meaning, if I said I've spoken 2 times, big deal. But if I've spoken over 1,000 times around the world from 30 countries, that's taken a lot of time. Brand name, when people say, oh, Chris, I'm kind of humble. If you're a salesperson, if you're talking about actual companies you've worked for, I'm not bragging when I say, you know what? I spoke at Google. I'm happy to say that, because you know how long it took me to get to a point to actually speak at Google? That's like a cool thing. So you want to name drop. If you don't name drop, why would people, well, if you don't name drop, how does someone else know that you're legitimate or not? It's just the tactfulness and the way you share that. It's not like, oh yeah, I spoke at Google. I spoke at, it's more about, yeah, I spoke at Google. Yeah, I spoke at New York Life. Yeah, I spoke at Farmers Insurance. And all my clients, I say the same thing. But I point this out to them. Another young man, he works at Lockheed Martin. And I said, Joseph, you want to be a speaker, you start where you are. As I said to everyone, he works at Lockheed Martin. I just researched it the other day. Lockheed Martin is another Fortune 500 company, which is ranked 56. So imagine a 25-year-old young man who works at Lockheed Martin, and already, if he wants to be a speaker or coach, he can already say, I spoke at a Fortune 500 company. How powerful is that to say that? So if you want to get better price points, higher price points, you start branding yourself as a global leader, as a global speaker, as an international entrepreneur. Next is this. We live in such a digital media world where if you don't post things online, both photos and videos, you just really haven't done anything. And for me personally, I'm an introvert. And people find that shocking because I wrote a book about networking, and I speak for a living. But introverts are those that seek their energy by themselves, meaning I love to write, I love to read, I love to meditate, I love to take walks. I prefer one-on-one meetings as opposed to like crazy parties. Extroverts get the energy from like a massive, like, oh my God, I gotta go to the party. You know, I used to be much more of an extrovert, but what I'm saying is, even though me, again, doing things that I'm comfortable with, if you met me 4 years ago, before I was more of a speaker, because I've been speaking for 17 years now, but most of my consultant work after I left American Express, it was primarily high-level strategy work, where if a company was making $90 million, how do they get to $1 billion? And once you start getting into $10 million, $100 million, those are all systems and processes and private equity, hedge funds. It's a different scale of thinking. But what I'm saying is, when I got into this world of I want to help people to make $100,000 or $1 million or $10 million, they need to see that I'm speaking. Because just because I say I'm a speaker, how do they know? So now if you go on my YouTube, I have about 200 videos because it's not about what you say you do, it's what you can prove by showing pictures. And this is, I'm telling you from example, I personally am a very private person, but I know publicly as a public figure, if I don't realize that seeing pictures like this, they might not hire me as a speaker, they might not even like me as a speaker, but it's irrefutable that if I'm standing on stage in front of 5,000 people, it's like, wow, Chris is a speaker. And this is the thing, you never want to count on one person. I ask my client, I'm going to bring my photographer and videographer because this happens all the time. They have professional photographers, but they don't care. I'm just one speaker. There are like hundreds of speakers there. I had 3 of my friends take photos and videos, and it turned out that this photo was a guy that saw me at a speech I gave 2 years ago, and he had 2 photos, which I posted on every single thing that I have, like on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. This is one of them, but what I'm saying is, the person that took the best photo wasn't the professional photographer, wasn't even a friend of mine. It was someone I met at a conference 2 years ago where I spoke. What I'm saying for all of you, you make sure that you take that photo. You make sure you take videos, because if you don't, you're going to do the best job in the world. If you can't prove it, it's as if it never happened. Because we live in a world that we're so distracted by this thing where people watch this more than 100 times. And there's a study that these high-frequency users on the phone, they look at their phone 900 times. We are so distracted in life now that if you don't have visual stimulation, if you don't catch someone's attention in 10 seconds, you're already done. Now you need videos. So anything you do, you have to post videos, you have to post photos, and don't worry early on about how high the production quality is. I remember when I posted and created my first online program like 2 years ago, I had it all professionally done. I had this amazing videographer, he did all this color coding, all this stuff. And then when I started meeting clients and talking to clients, well, Chris, I don't live in Beverly Hills like you do. I don't have this crazy budget. I don't have a videographer. I don't have all this stuff. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to prove that just based on content alone and a smartphone, you can build a program and make money. So my last program, I literally shot on my smartphone. No color quotient, no color whatever, color correction. But the point is, it's doing pretty well because it's about the content. So don't worry about having everything perfect, because it never is. I used to have the worst acne. You know, my skin is kind of oily. Now that the lights are on, I should have put some little foundation, because if now I'm on video, it's not going to look good. But you know what? Whatever, okay? Don't worry about that. Remember, it's not about you. It's about who you can inspire. The more you focus on your audience, your clients, the world, the less you'll be focusing on how insecure you feel, how scared it is, how uncomfortable you feel about being a speaker or a coach. And the best way to start is just post on Facebook Live. The thing with technology is this. Facebook Live has only been around for about 2 years. And it's free. If you're not utilizing Facebook Live or Snapchat or Instagram or LinkedIn, I mean, you have to use these because they're free. Back in the day, you have to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars. People still do. But now it's free. So if you're not using that, you're not in the right mindset or the right methodology to do very well. So take photos and take videos, and it's about how impressive it sounds and looks. So when I talk about if you give a speech, you get a testimonial, the more higher up that person is in terms of social success and external success, the more impressive it sounds. I didn't know it at the time, but when I interviewed Elon Musk a few years back, I made sure I videotaped it. Even though the videotape was crappy because I wasn't planning on even creating a speaker training program online, that was last year, but I have video of him saying at one point, wow, you know a lot. I got Elon Musk. I impressed Elon Musk. I'm only telling you this because every single person that you've impressed, you can't just say, oh, thank you so much, Christopher, for the compliment. You get me. If I were to compliment you on a speech, you get me on video. Hey, Christopher, I was inspired by your talk. If you saw me talk, do you think you can do a quick video testimony? Absolutely. But you have to get it in the moment. Because if you don't get it in the moment, you're done. You're like, oh, no, I'll get it tomorrow. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. You might never see this person tomorrow. The busier they are, you'll see them one time, possibly. So keep in mind that you have to literally be so laser focused that, yes, you want to do well on that speech. Yes, you want to give good content. But if you want to be a successful, sustainable, successful entrepreneur, you have to get video and photo proof, because if you don't do that, you're not going to be a marketable entrepreneur that's scalable. It's so important. I stress that over and over. It seems so simple, but it's not. And the more impressive it looks, the more impressive you look, that means the more money you can get hired for, and that means the more impact you can make. I have a client named Ed. He's very passionate. He said, Chris, I don't really care about money. I'm like, what do you care about, Ed? He's like, I want to make a difference. Well, let me ask you this. If Richard Branson charges $200,000 for a speech, is he making a difference? Duh, right? But again, your price point is directly related to your value, your branding, but also directly related to the audience you have, okay? Last point is this, have fun. Have fun. This is me in front of the Sydney Opera House in Sydney, California. No, Sydney, Australia. A little bit further. So again, I traveled close to 100,000 miles, 22 cities, 10 countries. To start my year off last year in Sydney with my buddies in Melbourne, listening to this Australian guy who turned out to be a client. He's singing the didgeridoo, to stand in front of the Sydney Opera House, which actually looks amazing and really cool. And you look at the bridge that they have there. You can actually climb up the bridge if you want. And then during that month alone, I was here, which I thank Jason for, which I reached out to Jason. Thanks for having me on the stage again, because I had a great feeling about this community. And then I flew out to Las Vegas, where my buddy picked me up in his Ferrari. And then I flew to Toronto, and I gave a speech there, and I went up to the CN Tower. And then I went to New York to visit my parents. And then I ended January off in Jamaica, going to Bob Marley's house, where as a singer-songwriter, to be in the very spot that he wrote Three Little Birds singing, "Don't worry about a thing, because everything is going to be all right." I'm like, this is so cool. That's the first month. And then I went to Barcelona and Zurich. But what I'm saying for you is, whether you want to travel 100,000 miles, or 10,000 miles, or 1,000 miles, whether you're a speaker or an online coach in your home, staring at a computer doing a webinar, it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, have fun. I meet so many very financially successful people that are miserable. They're miserable. I have a client that I just spoke to last week. He was like so psyched for me and so inspired and excited about my life, even though he literally sold his company for like $100 million, and he's very successful. But he has 200 employees. He can't just walk away. I can. I'm beholden to no one. If I travel, it doesn't hurt my business at all. When I went to Barcelona, I haven't been there for years. I get off the plane. I flew 6,000 miles. I get off the plane. Within 5 minutes, a woman approaches me and says, "Christopher Kai?" I'm like I'm in Barcelona. She's a client of mine in my online program for speaker training, and she's in Idaho named Elaine. She's talking about, oh my gosh, like synchronicity. What I'm saying is, make sure you have fun. If fun for you is sitting at home, creating your online program, do that. If fun for you is traveling, do that. But you don't want to be those entrepreneurs that become successful with money and they hate their lives. They're spending hours on email. They're spending all this time doing these nonsensical things where it is necessary, but you delegate that out. So just make sure you have fun, because if you don't, why even do it? You build a company to hopefully have money, to hopefully use that money to buy more freedom, and then when you have the money, you don't have the freedom, now you're more stressed. Think about how stressed Elon Musk is. That guy burns billions of dollars a year. He has thousands of people that he has to be responsible for. Everyone thinks he's a genius. He just broke up with Amber Heard. He's depressed. I mean, think about that. So instead of aspiring to be someone else, Just aspire to be the better person of you, and make sure you have fun. Because if you don't have fun, you can't do like silly poses like this. Why even do it? Because it's just for naught. I'm going to end with one final story. How many of you saw the Golden Globes on Sunday? Someone's clapping. So Oprah Winfrey, very inspiring, right? Now, Oprah Winfrey wins the Cecil Demille Award. On the outside, she has nothing in common with anyone in this room. Nothing. She's a $3 billion woman, the most powerful, successful African-American woman in the world, one of the most powerful women, one of the most powerful leaders in the world. She doesn't live a life that you and I live. And I know this because I've met at least 50 billionaires. They live in this insane world that's not like anyone. They don't know what TSA means. They don't know what a gas pump is. They don't know what all these basic things like insurance is, because they live in a world where they can go into any store, like let's say Hermes. She can buy a $29,000 purse, or you know what? She'll just buy the store. You know what? Hermes in a hotel, I'm going to just buy the hotel. Oh, you know what? I want to meet, like last week when I met Jeff Bezos, Leonardo DiCaprio was there. People that have certain power and influence, they can literally do pretty much anything they want. But they can't tell you that. You know, what irks me is that why do interviewers ask people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett if money is important? They can't tell you the truth. They can't say, of course it's important. Duh. Bill Gates lives in a $100 million house. Warren Buffett, though he lives in the same house 50 years ago, he flies private. What I'm saying is, a woman like this, on the exterior, doesn't really have anything in common with us. She lives in not a mansion, she lives in a compound, which she calls the promised land in Montecito. It's 42 acres. But the reason why she's able to relate with us is because it's about a story. The first thing she says in her actual acceptance speech is, in 1965, I was in my living room, and I was looking at the TV screen, and I saw a man. And I'm paraphrasing, it's not exactly verbatim, but how many of you saw her speech? I saw a man on TV, and the first time in my life, I saw a man that looked like me, a black man named Sidney Poitier, an elegant man. And for the first time, I saw the dream that I can be like. And then I remember my mother worked her job. She had tired bones in the linoleum floor. And she talks about another woman who died recently because that was the more impactful narrative. But what I'm saying is, a $3 billion woman that lives in a 42-acre compound called the Promised Land, that's just one of her properties, who doesn't even know how to pump gas in a car when she had she went on a trip with Gail, who was also at the Golden Globes where I met on Saturday. She forgot how to pump gas in her car. So she's not one of us anymore per se, but when she shares a story of when she was 10 years old, when a poor black woman in the South grows up, molested, raped, abused, has a miscarried, has relationships where she's abused, has no value, but now she's this phenomenal woman. How powerful is it that this entire speech, I talked about stories. How powerful is it that a woman who is so successful can still relate to all of us by saying, in 1965, when I was 10 years old, I looked at a television screen and I saw a man. So again, technique-wise, I can break down every single part of her speech for every single speaker that I've ever seen. Because I've studied this, I've given many talks, but speaking is not enough. You have to learn the business side. But for an Oprah Winfrey to be able to talk about truth, that's what you all can do, and you all will do, and you all are doing. But if you want to have the biggest impact in the world, you have to think globally. Don't think like, oh, you know, Chris, I'm just going to speak at my neighbor. No. We live in a world where you can be on a Facebook Live for free and have people from all around the world seeing you. It's crazy. Please appreciate how powerful it is. So that's the final thing I'm going to add. And I hope you remember that your story is like a seed. And so if you were to take your right hand out and place your right hand or your open palm out right now, if you were to envision a seed in your hand right now, and that seed is your story, the point of the seed is not to keep it in your hand. The point of the seed is to plant that seed, that story, that inspirational story that you have, that purpose, into someone else's mind, most importantly, heart. If you have that in your consciousness, every single step of the way, building that story, building that brand, taking photos of that, then you'll be able to say like a Oprah Winfrey, speaking your truth is the most powerful tool that we all have, because it really is. So thank you so much, and if you want to stay in touch, please sign up for my newsletter. Thank you so much.